Mexico's Tren Maya is an impressive 1,554-kilometer train route that circles the Yucatan Peninsula. In this series, we take you with us as we explore the entire route. From amazing archaeological sites, crystal clear lakes, amazing beaches, colorful colonial towns, magical cenotes, and delicious local foods, we experience it all.
Welcome to La Ruta Puuc. This area is known for all of its archaeological zones, and we are going to be spending 12 nights in the tiny town of Sayil to explore as many as possible.
And today we drove about 40 minutes to the archaeological zone of Kabah.
This archaeological zone is right off of the highway, and the entrance fee is 80 pesos per person, and then we had to pay 50 pesos for the camera.
Behind us is a structure called Cold's Pope.
This building is, I think, one of the coolest we have seen in all of the archaeological zones that we have been to. Another thing I did want to mention is one of the reasons we're staying so many days is because, like today, the high is going to be 103 degrees. So we got up as early as possible to be at this site when it opened at 8. We might get another one in today, but there's no way we're filling our days with 3 or 4 sites. It's just going to be way too hot for that. So we're spreading it out, and we're going to be enjoying our pool in the afternoon.
So along with all the carvings that are on all the buildings, there's a bunch of rocks around that have carvings on them as well. They're just kind of piled up everywhere.
Yeah, you can tell that they have just scratched the surface at this site. It is really, really neat. And another cool thing about it, we're the only ones here.
Thanks to the 100-degree heat, it's super dry here, so we don't have to drench ourselves in deep because the mosquitoes aren't around, like we did in Xlapak.
Yeah, that's the one upside to like melting in the sun. Behind us now is one of the only freestanding mine arches that's left, and it once served as the entrance to the city. Behind it, there was a long sack bay, or one of those white paved limestone roads that went all the way to Uxmal, which is the biggest site in the area, and we'll be checking that out tomorrow.
So So as I mentioned before, it looks like they're still working on this site.
And unfortunately, that seems to include the Grand Pyramid. It is just now looking like a pile of rubble behind us. It looks like it's going to be super, super impressive once they get it restored. But as for now, not so much.
All right, so we finished up the last archaeological zone at about 9:30, so we figured it was a little too early for a celebratory beer. So now we're on to the second archaeological site of the day, Sayil.
Yeah, it was just a 10-minute drive up the road, and this site was just 75 pesos per person, and yet again, we're the only ones here. This very impressive building behind us is the Grand Palacio. We're gonna go check it out.
So an interesting thing about this place is Sayil is Mayan for the place of the ants.
And you can see why there are tons of anthills everywhere. Another cool fact is that that Grand Palacio was actually built in stages. So the first layer was built in like the 600s, and then the top layer wasn't completed until close to the year 1000 AD.
Next stop is a temple of hieroglyphics.
And if you can see behind us, the temple is still mostly buried, but you can see some of the hieroglyphs around the door frame.
So we just made the roughly 1 kilometer walk to Palacio Sur.
This Palacio is definitely not as restored as the Grand Palacio, but it still is cool. We have one more stop here before we can get that well-deserved cold beer, and that is El Mirador.
We drove about 25 minutes down the road to this little town called Ticul to eat at their most popular restaurant.
And it was fantastic. We got our well-deserved Modelo Negras, and then we had an order of guacamole, which the guacamole was just okay. But then David got the filet.
Did a race.
And it was really thin sliced tender beef with lots of cilantro and lime, really good. And then I got the Puuc chook, which is their specialty, and it had a great grill flavor. And the price was really fair too, so definitely enjoyed it. Now we've come to the town square to go check out the church and grab our picture by the letters.
So unfortunately the church was closed, but they do have some really cool statues out here of Mayan gods.
Yeah, they're like in the center of a lot of the streets. The other thing that Ticul is known for is their shoe production. There are tons and tons and tons of shoe stores, and then there are guys in tuk-tuks who offer to give you a ride to all of the shoe stores. But we're not in the market for shoes. I do think we're in the market for ice cream, so I see a place over there.
This morning we woke up bright and early to drive the 40 minutes to Uxmal to get here right at open at 8 a.m.
Yeah, because today is a Sunday, so residents as well as Mexican nationals do get in free, and this site is incredibly expensive. If you are a foreigner, it is 556 pesos, but I can confirm we got in completely free today, except we do have to pay parking, which parking was 116 pesos, and as you can see, we are in front of the Pyramid of the Magician, and there is no one behind us yet. We can see tour groups, though, coming in the distance. Yep.
Well, it was really worth getting up early to get here because we beat all the tour groups in and we were able to get some of the site to ourselves right away.
Yeah, even though we were really looking forward to this site and we had high expectations, it is super impressive. There are carvings everywhere. This site, like others in the Puuc region, had their peak between 600 and 900 AD. And this site, Uxmal, is the largest Puuc site, and at its peak had over 20,000 residents.
In this plaza, instead of listening to hordes of tourists, all we could hear were the circling swallows. So a couple features that make this Puuc style of architecture unique is their use of columns and of intricate carvings, especially on the upper half of buildings like you'll see behind us here. And a lot of those carvings are actually of the god Choc. Yeah, he's the god that has the, it looks like an elephant trunk on him. And he's the god of water from the Mayans. And you'd think that'd be associated with rain or the sky, but it's actually associated with the earth because they got their waters from the cenotes.
Yeah, kind of cool fact.
So Maya, the name Uxmal means thrice built.
Some people think that the reason for that is because the main pyramid was built in different stages. But once archaeologists actually got inside, they realized that it was actually built in 5 different stages, and the original pyramid was very small.
In the back section of the site, there was a lot more reconstruction work, and unfortunately it was very obvious because it didn't match the style or stone color in other sections. So Uxmal only took about an hour and a half to get through. Actually, we walked it twice. We did it counterclockwise and then clockwise.
Yeah, so since it was only about 9:30, we decided to head across the street to Choco Story. This is a chocolate museum as well as a wildlife preserve, so we're gonna go check it out. Right, so when you first come in Choco Story, they have a fish pond here. And then they have this dispenser for fish food. And when you come over to it and you turn it, all the fish come up to the water and open their mouths for the food. Right, so since we got here so early, there's actually only one other visitor here.
And it was only 190 pesos per person.
Yeah, and that includes both the chocolate museum part as well as the eco park part.
So we just learned that the process of cacao is actually very similar to the process of coffee, where they have to actually like ferment the beans after to get rid of the outer husk of it, and then they clean it and then they dry them in the sun.
Yeah, and the other thing that was really cool here is that we got to feed spider monkeys. And even though they are like in a very large cage, the reason for that is that they were found either in people's homes already, they were in kind of like circus type situations, or they were found in the center of the country where they don't belong. So they already were not self-sufficient, so they're here in kind of like a rescued capacity.
After feeding all the animals, we stopped to wash our hands before heading into the traditional chocolate drink making demonstration. We were able to flavor our own beverages with a mix of allspice, cinnamon, cayenne, and sugar.
We just finished up at Choco Story and we stopped into their little cafe and got 2 chocolate frappes. They're only 70 pesos each and they are super delicious and refreshing. It's a good way to end it.
So we just drove about 15 minutes up the road to the little town of Muna.
The reason we're here is to check out their church and then to eat at a very highly rated restaurant.
So we finally got our refrescante beer, and we brought some chips and some frijoles. Unfortunately, I didn't grab a photo of it or a video before we started, but those frijoles are amazing. So this morning we drove about 45 minutes to the archaeological zone of Labná.
This zone, unfortunately, has a large gate with a padlock on it. Internet says that it's open, and it does look like there is a little path to the side that you can get around this gate. So we've come this far. We're going to go try to check it out. Well, we made it inside. There wasn't anybody at the ticket counter, but there were a couple guys working on some construction of what looks like some stores and facilities for here in the future. But the first building that we came across was the Palacio.
And from what I read, it was built between 750 AD to 1000 in 3 different phases. So one interesting feature about Labná is that they have an elevated sac bay, which is a ceremonial road. You can see it right here.
The most iconic structure here at Labná is, of course, this arch. You can see it is intricately carved and once served as the entrance to the city.
So as we were leaving Labná, the guy was there to take the money, so we went and paid him then.
Yeah, we were walking by the ticket booth and I was like, yeah, fuimos. We already went. The archaeological zones are supposed to open at 8, but he wasn't there till 9. And then when we just pulled up here at Xlapak, the gate was locked and the guy on his little motorbike just came up and unlocked it. So around here, maybe it's more like 9 when they open.
The entrance fee to this site was also 75 pesos per person, and the name Xlapak actually means old wall.
This site is actually one of the longer inhabited sites. It goes all the way back to 250 BC. Then it had its peak between 700 and 1000 AD, but it didn't actually become abandoned until 1250. So real long run here.
This site had fewer structures compared to other sites in the area, and the structures that were there clearly had not had much in the way of reconstruction. So now we've driven about 25 minutes to the little town of Santa Elena.
We've come to this town for a couple of reasons. Number one, we read that they have a mummy museum. They also have a very impressive old church. And then there is a restaurant that's supposed to make some really great pak chuk.
The entrance fee for this museum was 100 pesos for both of us, or about $6. The museum itself was very small, and the mummies were a bit more skeleton than mummy. After snapping our family photo and checking out the town square, it was finally time to eat. So we just finished up our lunch at Uxmal. The food was pretty good, but the prices are a little higher than places around here.
Yeah, another thing is since we came so early, they didn't have the charcoal going, so we couldn't order the pak chuk, which is what they're famous for. The restaurant that we ate at yesterday, though, I think was our favorite.
Yeah.
I hope that you have enjoyed following us on the Ruta Puuc. We are going to make a video next week in this same location, show you some other things to do in the area, as well as give you a tour of our Airbnb and a full breakdown of our expenses.